On a quiet evening, when the last orange light of the sun was disappearing behind the buildings, a small gray cat stepped carefully out from under an old wooden fence. She was not a special cat in the way humans usually use the word special. She had no expensive collar, no famous owner, and no unusual color. She was simply a domestic cat, Felis catus. Yet inside her small body was an extraordinary collection of biological systems, evolutionary adaptations, chemical reactions, electrical signals, and survival mechanisms that have been developing for millions of years. The cat stopped beside the fence and lifted her head. To a human, the street was becoming dark. To her, however, the world was still full of information. Her eyes were designed to function efficiently in dim light. Like human eyes, they contained two main types of light-sensitive cells called rods and cones. Cones helped distinguish colors and worked best in bright conditions, while rods were extremely sensitive to low levels of light. Cats had many more rod cells than humans. This gave the gray cat an advantage as evening approached. Behind the retina of each was another useful structure called the tapetum lucidum. It acted almost like a biological mirror. Light that passed through the retina could be reflected back across the light-sensitive cells, giving those cells another opportunity to detect it. This was also why a cat's eyes sometimes appear to glow when light hit them at night. The cat's pupils became large and round as darkness increased. During bright daylight, the pupils could narrow into vertical slits. The muscles controlling the iris constantly changed the size of the pupil, regulating how much light entered the eye. Her eyes were excellent for detecting movement. That ability was not an accident. For thousands of generations, cats that successfully noticed the smallest movements of insects, rodents, and other prey had a better chance of finding food and surviving. Those successful animals reproduced and passed many of their useful traits to their offspring. This process was called natural selection. But vision was only one part of the information entering the cat's nervous system. Suddenly, her right ear rotated. A faint scratching sound had come from somewhere near a pile of boxes. Both of her ears could move independently because they were controlled by many small muscles. By changing the direction of her ears, she could locate sounds more accurately. Cats could also detect frequencies much higher than humans could hear. This was especially useful when hunting small rodents because mice and rats often produced high-frequency sounds. The cat became completely still. Sound waves had entered her outer ear and traveled through the ear canal until they reached her eardrum. The vibrations then passed through tiny bones of the middle ear and entered the inner ear. Inside the cochlea, specialized sensory cells converted mechanical vibrations into electrical nerve signals. Those signals traveled through neurons toward the brain. The cat was not consciously thinking about neurons or electrical impulses. Nevertheless, thousands of neurons were communicating rapidly. A neuron was a specialized cell of the nervous system. Signals traveled electrically along its membrane. At connections between neurons, called synapses, chemical messengers known as neurotransmitters help transfer information from one cell to another. Within fractions of a second, the cat's brain analyzed the sound. Possible prey. Her body changed immediately. Muscles became ready for movement. Her breathing became slightly different. Her attention focused on one location. The autonomic nervous system helped coordinate some of these responses without requiring conscious control. But before approaching the boxes, the cat lowered her nose toward the ground. Smell provided another map of her environment. Millions of scent molecules surrounded her. Some came from food. Some came from plants. Others carried information left by animals. Inside the nasal cavity were olfactory receptors. When particular molecules interacted with these receptors, nerve signals traveled toward the olfactory areas of the brain. For a cat, smell was important not only for finding food, but also for communication. A tree, wall, chair, or doorway could carry chemical information about another animal that had visited hours earlier. The cat walked toward the boxes. Her paws made almost no sound. This silent movement was possible because of both anatomy and behavior. The soft pads beneath her feet reduced sound and absorbed some impact. Her claws remained retracted while she walked. Cat claws were different from human fingernails in both structure and function. Most of the time, the claws were protected inside the paw. When climbing, defending herself, or capturing prey, the cat could extend them by using muscles and tendons. As she approached the boxes, she lowered her body. Her skeleton supported her movement while allowing remarkable flexibility. Cats possessed more flexible spines than humans. The vertebral column could bend significantly during running and jumping. Their shoulder blades were attached to the body mainly by muscles rather than by a rigid bony connection like a human collarbone system. This helped increase stride length and flexibility. Her muscles were also organized for rapid acceleration. A hunting cat did not usually chase prey across extremely long distances. Instead, she relied on stalking followed by a short, explosive attack. That strategy required rapid muscle contraction. Muscle cells needed energy. Inside those cells, molecules of ADP, adenosine triphosphate, acted as a direct source of usable chemical energy. ADP could not simply appear from nowhere. Cells produced it through metabolic processes. Most of the cat cells contain mitochondria. Inside these organelles, nutrients from food could be processed through cellular respiration. With oxygen available, glucose and other fuel molecules could ultimately contribute to the production of ADP. In simplified form, aerobic respiration could be represented as glucose plus oxygen carbon dioxide plus water plus energy. But cats were not simply small versions of humans when it came to nutrition. Cats were obligate carnivores. Their evolutionary history had shaped a metabolism strongly adapted to animal-based food. They required particular nutrients that were naturally obtained from prey. One important example was taurine. Taurine was an amino acid-related compound essential for several functions, including normal vision and heart function. Cats could not produce enough taurine on their own to meet all of their needs, so they needed it in their diet. They also required preformed vitamin A from animal sources more directly than many omnivorous animals. These nutritional requirements reflected their evolutionary past. The ancestors of domestic cats survived mainly by hunting animals. Over many generations, natural selection did not strongly maintain metabolic pathways for obtaining certain nutrients from plant materials when those nutrients were already abundant in prey. Near the boxes, the scratching sound stopped. The cat waited. Nothing moved. Then something tiny crossed the ground. Her eyes detected it immediately. A mouse. The mouse disappeared beneath another box. The cat's body lowered even further. Her whiskers pointed forward. Whiskers were not ordinary hairs. Scientifically, they were called vibrissae. Each whisker was deeply rooted in tissue rich in sensory nerves and blood vessels. Movement of the whisker could provide detailed information about nearby objects and air movements. A cat did not need to touch an object directly with her nose to know it was close. Changes in airflow around surfaces could move the whiskers slightly, helping her navigate narrow or dark spaces. Her whiskers were particularly valuable because a predator could not rely entirely on vision when prey was extremely close to the face. The mouse moved again. The cat jumped. Several systems worked together at once. The brain sent motor signals through the spinal cord and peripheral nerves. Motor neurons activated groups of skeletal muscle fibers. Calcium ions played an important role inside those muscle cells. Proteins called actin and myosin interacted to produce contraction. The hind legs pushed strongly against the ground. According to Newton's third law of motion, when the cat pushed downward and backward against the ground exerted an equal and opposite force on her body. She accelerated forward. Her vestibular system helped maintain balance. Inside the inner ear were structures called semicircular canals. These fluid-filled canals detected rotational movement of the head. Other structures helped detect linear acceleration and orientation relative to gravity. Information from the inner ear combined with signals from the eyes, muscles, joints, and paws. All of this helped the brain constantly estimate the position of the body. The mouse escaped. The cat landed beside the box. She did not fall. Her front legs absorbed part of the impact. Cats were famous for their ability to turn themselves while falling. The behavior was often called the cat riding reflex. It did not mean cats could safely survive every fall. High falls could still cause serious injury or death. However, during a fall, a cat could use its flexible spine and information from the vestibular system to rotate different parts of the body and orient the feet toward the ground. The gray cat was not interested in physics. She was interested in the mouse. Again she waited. Minutes passed. The temperature began to fall. Inside her body, however, physiological mechanisms were keeping conditions relatively stable. This maintenance of a stable internal environment was called homeostasis. The cat cells function best within particular ranges of temperature, water balance, ion concentration, glucose concentration, and pH. The brain played a major role in maintaining this balance. One important region was the hypothalamus. If body temperature increased too much, the nervous system could activate mechanisms that encouraged heat loss. If temperature dropped, metabolism and behavior could help conserve or produce heat. Cats could sweat through some areas, especially their paw pads, but sweating was not their main cooling mechanism in the same way that it was for humans. Behavior was extremely important. A cat could seek shade when hot, stretch out on a cool floor, move into sunlight when cold, or curl the body tightly to reduce exposed surface area. The gray cat decided that waiting beside the boxes was no longer useful. She walked toward a house where she sometimes received food. As she walked, her tail remained raised. A cat's tail served several functions. It could contribute to balance during movement, but it was also an important communication structure. Cats communicated through body posture, scent, vocalization, eye movements, ear position, and tail position. A raised tail in a relaxed domestic cat could indicate a friendly social approach. A rapidly moving or lashing tail might indicate strong arousal, irritation, or conflict. Flattened ears could signal fear or aggression. Slow blinking was often associated with relaxed social interactions. Domestic cats had developed complex ways of communicating with both other cats and humans. Interestingly, adult cats did not normally meow at one another as frequently as many pet cats meowed toward people. Vocal communication with humans appeared to have become especially important during domestication. Thousands of years earlier, the relationship between humans and cats had begun to change. When humans developed agricultural communities and stored grain, rodents were attracted to those settlements. Wild cats followed the rodents. Humans benefited because cats reduced populations of animals that damaged stored food. Cats benefited because human settlements provided concentrated sources of prey and shelter. This was probably not a simple event in which humans deliberately captured wolves and transformed them into cats. Cats and humans entered a relationship that gradually became closer. Research on genetics and archaeology suggested that the domestic cat was closely related to the Near Eastern wildcat, Felis silvestris libica. Over long periods, cats that were less fearful of humans could live more successfully near settlements. Humans may also have favored cats with particular behaviors or appearances. This process contributed to domestication. Yet modern house cats retained many behavioral characteristics of their hunting ancestors. Even a well-fed pet cat might stalk insects or chase small animals. Hunting behavior was driven by neurological and behavioral mechanisms, not simply by hunger. The gray cat reached the house. A woman had left a small bowl of cooked meat beside the door. The cat smelled it before she saw it. She approached carefully. Her digestive system was ready to process the food. She bit into a piece. Her teeth reflected her carnivorous lifestyle. At the front were small incisors. Long canine teeth were useful for gripping and killing prey. Behind them were premolars and molars, including specialized teeth that help cut meat. Unlike herbivores, which often had broad grinding teeth for breaking down fibrous plant material, the cat's teeth were highly suited to cutting animal tissue. Food entered the mouth, mixed with saliva, and traveled down the esophagus. It entered the stomach, where acidic conditions and digestive enzymes contributed to the breakdown of proteins. Later, partially digested food moved into the small intestine. The pancreas supplied digestive enzymes, while bile from the liver and gallbladder contributed to fat digestion. The intestinal lining contained microscopic structures that increased surface area for absorption. Nutrients crossed the intestinal wall and entered the blood or lymphatic system. The circulatory system then transported absorbed molecules throughout the body. The cat's heart worked continuously. It had 4 chambers, 2 atria, and 2 ventricles. The right side received blood returning from the body and pumped it toward the lungs. In the lungs, carbon dioxide moved from the blood into the air spaces, while oxygen moved from inhaled air into the blood. The left side of the heart then pumped oxygen-rich blood through the systemic circulation. Red blood cells carried oxygen using hemoglobin. Each hemoglobin molecule contained iron-containing groups capable of binding oxygen. When tissues were active and required oxygen, oxygen could be released and diffuse into the cells. This continuous connection between breathing, circulation, digestion, and cellular respiration allowed the animal to survive. No organ worked completely alone. The cat finished eating. She licked her lips. Then grooming began. She raised one front paw, licked it repeatedly, and rubbed it across her face. A cat's tongue felt rough because its surface contained backward-facing structures called papillae. Some were made of keratin, the same structural protein found in hair and claws. These papillae helped remove loose hair, separate fur, and clean the coat. Grooming had several functions. It removed dirt and parasites. It helped maintain the fur. It could also influence body temperature as saliva evaporated. But grooming created another problem. Hair swallowed during grooming could accumulate inside the digestive tract. Usually, swallowed hair passed through the intestines. Sometimes it formed a mass that could be vomited as a hairball. After grooming, the cat walked toward a patch of soil. She scratched the surface, eliminated waste, and then covered it. Her kidneys had been working long before this behavior occurred. Kidneys filtered the blood and helped regulate water, electrolytes, acid-base balance, and waste products. Each kidney contained many microscopic functional units called nephrons. Blood entered tiny networks of capillaries where filtration occurred. As the filtrate moved through the nephron, useful substances and water could be reabsorbed, while other substances were secreted into the forming urine. Cats evolved from ancestors that often lived in relatively dry environments. Their kidneys were highly effective at producing concentrated urine, allowing them to conserve water. This partly explained why cats sometimes had a relatively low drive to drink large quantities of water compared with certain other animals. Nevertheless, adequate hydration remained extremely important. Domestic cats fed only dry food sometimes obtained much less water from food than an animal eating natural prey or wet food. Water intake, kidney function, age, diet, and disease could all influence urinary health. The gray cat covered the soil and moved away. A larger black cat appeared at the end of the street. Immediately, the gray cat's behavior changed. Her body became tense. Her ears turned sideways. The black cat stopped. Neither animal wanted unnecessary injury. Fighting had biological costs. A serious wound could reduce the ability to hunt, escape danger, or reproduce. Before physical conflict, many animals therefore use signals to communicate strength, fear, intention, and ownership of space. The gray cat arched her back. Her fur appeared larger. Tiny muscles associated with hair follicles could make the fur stand more upright. This was called piloerection. Making the body appear larger could discourage an opponent. The black cat looked away and slowly moved to another area. The gray cat relaxed. This interaction showed an important principle of animal behavior. Aggression did not always mean actual fighting. Signals could resolve conflicts without physical injury. Hormones also influence behavior. Chemical messengers produced by endocrine glands traveled through the bloodstream and affected distant tissues. Stress-related hormones could alter heart rate, metabolism, awareness, and energy availability. Sex hormones influenced reproduction and some social behaviors. In unneutered cats, reproductive hormones could contribute to behaviors such as mating calls, territorial roaming, spraying, and competition. Reproduction itself was another biological process shaped by evolution. A female cat could produce several kittens in one litter. During fertilization, genetic material from the mother and father combined. DNA carried hereditary information. DNA molecules were organized into chromosomes inside cells. Genes were sections of DNA that influenced traits by providing instructions involved in producing functional molecules, especially proteins. Each kitten received a unique genetic combination. This was one reason kittens from the same parents could have different coat colors or patterns. Cat coat genetics could become surprisingly complex. One particularly interesting example involved orange and black coloring. A major gene influencing orange coloration was linked to the X chromosome. Female cats normally had 2 X chromosomes, while males normally had 1 X and 1 Y chromosome. Because females could inherit different color versions of the gene on their 2 X chromosomes, and because 1 X chromosome became largely inactive in different cells early in development, patches of different colors could develop. This helped explain why tortoiseshell and calico cats were overwhelmingly female. Male calico cats could occur, but they were rare and were often associated with unusual chromosome combinations such as XXY. Genetics, therefore, became visible directly in the pattern of fur. The gray cat, however, had no knowledge of chromosomes. She continued down the street. She found a small cardboard box beside a shop. Before entering it, she smelled the edges carefully. Cats often seemed attracted to boxes and enclosed spaces. Several biological reasons could contribute to this behavior. A small enclosed area provided protection from several directions. It could reduce exposure and provide a secure resting location. Cardboard also acted as an insulator. Cats had a higher normal body temperature than humans, generally around 38 to 39 degrees Celsius. Comfortable environmental temperatures for cats could therefore be warmer than the conditions many humans preferred indoors. Curling inside an insulating box helped conserve body heat. The cat stepped inside. Before lying down, she turned in a circle twice. Then she curled her body tightly. Her breathing slowed. Her eyes closed. Soon she entered sleep. Cats slept for many hours each day, although the exact amount depended on age, environment, activity, health, and individual behavior. Sleep was not a single uniform state. Mammals cycled through different sleep stages. During some stages, brain activity, muscle tone, heart rate, and eye movements changed. Cats also experienced rapid eye movement, or REM, sleep. During REM sleep, the brain could be highly active while many skeletal muscles became relatively inactive. A sleeping cat might twitch its whiskers, paws, or ears? Was she dreaming about chasing mice? Science could measure brain activity and behavior, but it could not directly ask the cat about the subjective content of her dream. This illustrated an important part of scientific thinking. Science depended on evidence. Scientists could observe measurable events, develop hypotheses, perform experiments, and compare predictions with results. But scientists also had to distinguish evidence from assumption. Saying that a sleeping cat showed REM activity was an observation that could be scientifically measured. Saying exactly what the cat was dreaming about was much harder to prove. Several hours passed. During sleep, biological repair and regulation continued. Proteins were synthesized. Cells maintained membranes. The immune system continued surveillance. Damaged molecules were repaired or replaced. Waste products were processed. The brain reorganized neural activity. Life never truly stopped. Near midnight, the cat opened her eyes. Something had moved outside the box. She remained still. Then she detected another sound. This time the source was above her. A moth moved near a streetlight. The cat came out of the box. She watched it intensely. The moth circled the light. The lamp created an artificial environmental condition that affected both predator and prey. Many insects used natural light sources, such as the moon and stars, as part of navigation. Artificial lights could disrupt these behaviors, attracting insects toward lamps. Human technology therefore altered ecological interactions, even in a small street at midnight. The moth came lower. The cat jumped. Missed. Again. Missed. On the third attempt, she struck it with one paw. For a moment, the moth disappeared beneath her. Then it escaped and flew upward. The cat watched until it vanished. Predation in nature was never perfectly efficient. Every attempt cost energy. Evolution therefore favored strategies that balanced energy expenditure with possible benefits. A predator that used more energy capturing food than the food provided would face a serious survival disadvantage. Energy moved through ecosystems. Plants captured energy from sunlight through photosynthesis. Herbivores obtained chemical energy by eating plants. Predators obtained energy by eating other animals. At every trophic level, large amounts of energy were used for metabolism and lost as heat rather than being transferred completely to the next level. The cat was part of that ecological network. Domestic and feral cats could also influence wildlife populations, especially birds, reptiles, and small mammals. This raised an important environmental question. Cats were beloved companion animals, but free-ranging domestic cats could become significant predators in ecosystems where native species had not evolved effective defenses against them. Responsible ownership, therefore, involved more than feeding an animal. Vaccination, neutering, identification, veterinary care, parasite control, and management of outdoor access could protect both the cat and surrounding wildlife. The gray cat walked farther. At the side of the road, she stopped. A vehicle approached. Its headlights became brighter. The cat's brain rapidly processed visual movement and sound. She moved backwards. The vehicle passed. Her survival depended partly on instinct but also on learning. Animals change behavior through experience. A young cat that survived frightening encounters with roads, dogs, humans, or other animals could learn associations that influenced future behavior. Learning involved changes in the nervous system. Connections between neurons could strengthen or weaken. This ability of a nervous system to change was called neuroplasticity. Some behaviors were strongly influenced by inherited biological programs. Others were learned. Most complex behaviors resulted from an interaction between genetics, development, environment, and experience. The simple question, is this behavior instinct or learning, therefore often had an incomplete answer. It could be both. The gray cat eventually reached a garden. Drops of water covered the grass. She walked across it. Cold water touched her paws. Receptors in her skin detected temperature, pressure, and touch. The skin was the body's largest protective barrier. It reduced water loss and defended internal tissues from many microorganisms and physical hazards. But the body was never completely isolated from microbes. Bacteria, fungi, viruses, and parasites existed throughout the environment. Some microorganisms could cause disease. Others were harmless or could live normally on body surfaces. The immune system helped distinguish threats and respond to them. Innate immune mechanisms provided rapid, general protection. Adaptive immunity developed more specific responses. Specialized white blood cells could recognize particular molecules associated with pathogens. Some immune cells produced antibodies. Vaccination used the adaptive immune system's capacity to develop immunological memory. By exposing the immune system to a safe form or component of a pathogen, vaccines could prepare the body to respond more rapidly during future exposure. For domestic cats, vaccination could protect against several serious infectious diseases. The gray cat had once been taken to a veterinary clinic by a local rescue worker. She remembered only that it was unpleasant. Scientifically, however, the clinic represented another intersection between humans and animal biology. Veterinary medicine used knowledge from anatomy, physiology, microbiology, genetics, pharmacology, immunology, pathology, and behavioral science. A veterinarian could examine heart rate, respiration, temperature, hydration, eyes, ears, teeth, skin, and movement. Blood tests could measure cells, enzymes, proteins, glucose, electrolytes, and other chemicals. Imaging methods, such as X-rays and ultrasound, could reveal structures that could not be observed directly from outside the body. Disease was often discovered by recognizing that normal biological regulation had been disturbed. For example, excessive thirst and urination might indicate kidney disease or diabetes. Weight loss could have many causes. Difficulty breathing could involve the respiratory system, cardiovascular system, infection, injury, or other problems. Because the same symptom could arise from different biological mechanisms, scientific diagnosis required evidence rather than guessing. The cat reached a shallow container of clean water. She drank. Her tongue moved much faster than a human observer might realize. When cats drank, they did not scoop water in exactly the same way a dog often did. The tip of the tongue touched the surface and rapidly pulled upward, creating a column of liquid. The cat then closed her mouth around part of the rising water before gravity caused it to fall. Fluid dynamics, inertia, gravity, and precise tongue movement all contributed. Something as ordinary as drinking water became an example of physics and biology working together. When she finished, she sat beside the container. The eastern sky was slowly becoming lighter. Birds began calling. The cat listened. Her pupils narrowed slightly. Another day was beginning. A child came into the garden and saw her. "Hello," the child whispered. The cat watched him. He slowly lowered one hand, but did not immediately touch her. This was sensible. Cats had individual temperaments. Some enjoyed close human contact. Some preferred distance. Fearful or unfamiliar cats could scratch or bite when threatened. The child remained still. The cat stepped closer and rubbed the side of her face against his leg. Around her cheeks and other body areas were scent glands. By rubbing objects or familiar individuals, a cat could deposit chemical signals. To the child, it was simply affection. To biology, it was also chemical communication. The child scratched gently behind the cat's ears. A low vibrating sound began. Purring. The mechanism of purring had been studied for years. It involved rhythmic neural signals and activity around the larynx, creating repeated changes in airflow as the cat inhaled and exhaled. Cats often purred during relaxed social interaction, but purring was not exclusively a sign of happiness. Cats could sometimes purr when frightened, injured, or under stress. Behavior therefore needed context. A single signal did not always have a single meaning. The cat closed her eyes halfway. Her brain was receiving touch signals from sensory receptors in the skin. Reward-related neural pathways were active. Hormones and neurotransmitters influenced the interaction. The child smiled. Two different mammalian species, separated by millions of years of evolution, were communicating through movement, touch, sound, and learned expectations. The child saw a cat, but science could see much more. It could see an animal whose eyes captured scarce photons in darkness. It could see sound waves becoming electrical impulses. It could see scent molecules binding to receptors. It could see muscles converting chemical energy into movement. It could see a flexible skeleton created by evolutionary history. It could see oxygen entering lungs, binding to hemoglobin, traveling through arteries, and diffusing into tissues. It could see nutrients becoming cellular energy. It could see kidneys controlling water and ions. It could see genes inherited through chromosomes. It could see immune cells defending tissues. It could see neurons forming memories. It could see hormones changing behavior. It could see natural selection written into anatomy. It could see ecology connecting the cat to mice, birds, insects, plants, microorganisms, and humans. And at an even smaller scale, science could see atoms. The cat's body was constructed from elements formed through cosmic processes long before cats, humans, or even Earth existed. Carbon formed the backbone of organic molecules. Hydrogen and oxygen formed water. Nitrogen was present in proteins and nucleic acids. Calcium strengthened bones. Phosphorus contributed to bones, ADP, and DNA. Iron helped hemoglobin transport oxygen. Sodium and potassium contributed to electrical signaling in nerves. Every movement of the cat depended ultimately on interactions among molecules. Every thought in the cat's brain involved physical and chemical events. Yet reducing the cat to chemistry alone would also miss something important about biology. Biological organization occurred at many levels. Atoms formed molecules. Molecules formed cellular structures. Cells formed tissues. Tissues formed organs. Organs formed systems. Systems formed an organism. Organisms interacted with populations. Populations interacted within ecosystems. To understand the cat completely, scientists needed to investigate all of these levels and how they influenced one another. The child stood up. The cat walked beside him toward the house. Morning sunlight reached her fur. Her body warmed. She stretched her front legs, lowered her chest, raised her back, and extended her spine. After several seconds, she relaxed. A bird landed on a nearby wall. The cat froze. Her ears turned forward. Her pupils changed. Her whiskers moved. Muscles prepared. Her nervous system calculated distance. Her body lowered. Millions of years of evolution seemed to appear in a single posture. Then the bird flew away. The cat sat down. There would be another opportunity. For the moment, she simply watched the morning. And perhaps that was the most remarkable scientific lesson hidden inside an ordinary cat. Science did not require a laboratory to begin. It began with observation. Why did her eyes shine at night? Why could she hear sounds that humans could not? Why were her whiskers so sensitive? Why did she land on her feet? Why did she purr? Why did she need meat? Why did she sleep so much? Why did kittens have different colors? Why did she hunt when she was not hungry? Why did she rub against people? Why could she see movement in darkness? Every why opened another door. Behind one door was physics. Behind another was chemistry. Another led to genetics. Another to anatomy. Another to physiology. Another to neuroscience. Another to ecology. Another to evolution. And each answer created new questions. That was how science moved forward. Scientists observed something. They asked a question. They proposed an explanation called a hypothesis. They gathered evidence. They designed experiments. They measured results. They compared those results with predictions. If the evidence did not support the hypothesis, they changed the explanation rather than forcing the evidence to fit it. Knowledge became stronger through testing, correction, repetition, and new discovery. The cat knew none of these words. She did not know that she belonged to kingdom Animalia, phylum Chordata, class Mammalia, order Carnivora, family Felidae, genus Felis, and species Felis catus. She did not know about DNA. She did not know about mitochondria. She did not know about action potentials. She did not know about natural selection. She did not know about gravity, Newton's laws, ADP, hemoglobin, homeostasis, neurons, chromosomes, or ecosystems. She simply lived according to the biological systems these scientific ideas described. Her heart continued beating. Her lungs continued breathing. Her neurons continued signaling. Her cells continued producing ADP. Her kidneys continued filtering blood. Her eyes continued collecting light. Her ears continued collecting sound. Her nose continued detecting chemicals. Her genes continued directing cellular processes. And her brain continued turning all that information into behavior. The child opened the house door. The gray cat looked inside. For several seconds, she remained between two worlds. Behind her was the outdoor environment where millions of years of predatory evolution had prepared her ancestors to hunt and survive. In front of her was the human world of houses, artificial light, prepared food, medicine, technology, and companionship. The domestic cat belonged to both. That was one reason cats remained so fascinating. A cat sleeping peacefully on a sofa still carried the anatomy of a predator. The eyes watching a toy were descendants of eyes that once watched wild prey. The ears responding to a packet of food had evolved to detect tiny animals moving in darkness. The soft paws crossing a bedroom floor contained claws designed for hunting and climbing. The small body curl beside a human retained ancient biological systems shaped over countless generations. The cat stepped through the doorway. The child placed a soft cloth near the window. She circled twice and lay down. Sunlight entered through the glass. Within minutes, her eyes closed. Outside, the world continued. Birds flew. Plants photosynthesized. Microorganisms reproduced. Cars moved. People worked. Cells divided. DNA was copied. Energy changed from one form to another. Matter cycled through living and non-living systems. And beside the window, the small gray cat slept quietly, carrying inside her body a living laboratory of physics, chemistry, evolution, genetics, behavior, and life itself.